I figured the best time to do this would be at the place where I would see Vans face to face. Because there wouldn't be any audio issues outside of us being in the same fucking room.
Right.
The reactions are real time, and it becomes that much more enjoyable as I grill you about things that you probably don't really want to talk about anymore. For example, you've been around for fucking 10 years. You just released a character in duality with something that you challenged me on, was Mizuguchi. Greatest character of the month. Just saying that now. I'm sure Root was great too. I played with it. It's good. So, the first question that everyone is dying to know, because I'm pretty sure they're going to like your answers more than they like mine, is 10 years ago, where did it start? How did you find M.U.G.E.N? What was that like?
Okay. I actually knew M.U.G.E.N from since I was a kid. I was 7 years old or something. It was 2001. And my brother actually downloaded M.U.G.E.N, and we had, the typical stuff. It was the DOS era, so it was M.U.G.E.N, Ryu, Sanders characters. When I moved to Colima, I was, 14, 15? Oh, no, wait, I was in the city, yeah. I moved, the thing is, I moved back to the city, and I was depressed because after moving, I lost contact with my friends and stuff. What I started to do as a hobby, because I couldn't go out, because the city is kind of dangerous. So I started playing around with emulators and M.U.G.E.N and stuff. So that's how I started making things. My goal at first was make one thing of everything. Make one stage, one screen pack, one character, one storyboard, and just get the proper tools so you can make a game. That was my goal. So I started with a stage. That's what I did.
So your first character, you did give it to me before, but I don't have it as of right now. I don't remember what it was. If you remember what it was, you can tell us. Well, basically, I was going to tell you to tell us about the first character you ever made, just in a general sense. We'll get to the more detail-related questions later. The first character you made, you remember what it is?
Yeah, it was Violent Ken.
What made you go with that?
I needed something easy. After reading the forums, they told me, well, everything Neo-Geo is pretty easy because you have the collision box viewer and other things. I chose Neo-Geo first because that was easy, supposedly. And then I chose, well, what's the easiest character you can ever make? And, well, that's obviously Ryu or Ken.
Right.
Or, well, that's at least the first idea you get. Right?
Yeah, Shotos are pretty easy.
So I chose Ken. And I said, well, Violet Ken is cooler, so I went with that.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good answer. Did you try to make it slightly accurate to the source, or did you have your own custom gameplay with it?
No, I actually wanted to try accuracy from the start. But it was really hard because there were no tools. No one really helped me out with details of how to calculate velocities or anything like that. So what I had to do was, when I wanted to make a move, I took screenshots every frame. And then I would check the changes in position and note that down and calculate the velocities for each move, one frame at a time. It was really time consuming. I mean, one move took me like 6 hours to make.
Jesus.
Yeah. I didn't know hit devs were supposed to have like a standard, every hard hit dev has a certain velocity and stuff. Yeah. For every move, I went in
and did it over and over and over.
Exactly.
Well, you did a better job than I did because I just fucking guessed for like the first 3 years of my career. And then when questioned about it, I was like, I know. Let me say something that sounds really intelligent. I would say I used a ruler and a stopwatch. What could possibly go wrong with that answer? And then it became a reoccurring joke with people who refuse to believe that I was not taking that seriously. But you kind of mentioned most of the challenges you went through with that. But what was the absolute biggest one that probably hit you the hardest in the sense of you're like, fuck, you were close to saying fuck this?
Probably throws, maybe. Throws. I've had that feeling like many times, right. But the very first one was throws. I hated making throws. When I realized that I was really weak, so to speak, at making throws, I decided to make a grappler, sort of, which was Ralph, and that's when I started making throws really fast. But after that, my problem was making the sprite files. Not because it's hard.
Just the tedious.
Yeah, it's tedious and boring. I hate it. I can't do it.
Well, I gotta tell you, after doing it 105 times, you're preaching to the choir. I don't recommend it. It's annoying, and I'm shocked that I fucking did any of that at all. Well, that's neither here nor there. In a bit of retrospection, your first character, if you were to play with it now, what would you tell your past self about it in terms of good or bad? You're not obviously going to expect the greatest thing in the world, but think of how most of us approach how people come out with all these other characters that are not exactly up to the standards we kind of acknowledge or see as decent.
Yeah.
Like, if you were in the hot seat coming from you now, what would you be saying to yourself?
I would probably be saying, I would start with the hit devs, definitely. I mean, if you get, this is the thing, with most characters, if you get the basic things right, like the movement and the basic moves, that's, to me, 80% of the character.
Right.
It's gonna feel great. If your basics are good, the specials maybe not so much, but the basics are really important. If you have really good basics, the rest can be fixed later. So I would probably just scold myself really hard. I would go, check your hit devs.
I understand, like, because the thing that a lot of people don't really put the most time on is the basics. So they like sweat themselves over the specials. Like, I'm using this character, and they got all these specials, and I'm just gonna run through these normals and get straight to the specials, and then the basics are wrong immediately. So you're like, well, I can't even get to the specials like I want to because the normals are so off or useless. Basically, they don't really consider the utility of things before they get to specials. And we end up with this sameness kind of deal with a lot of stuff. I'm not calling out any particular style. Let me say that first. Like, this is not an attack on any specific style that you want to make or whatever. I've come to terms with the fact that people do what they want to do, and I don't care.
One issue that really comes up as of late is most people don't check the movement. I know this is like, it has turned into a meme of sorts, like the I can crouch while running.
Yeah.
I think that was my fault, sorry. But it has some truth to it, because if you're gonna be controlling a character, and I don't know, even if you're not going for accuracy, if the character doesn't move like you expect him to move, it's gonna be awkward. No matter what you do, it's gonna be awkward from the get-go. And for example, one of the most basic bugs that's almost always present is if you jump over the opponent and you keep holding the jump button, sometimes
they don't turn around.
That's the basic one.
Yeah, because that was a problem I had never thought about it for years because no one ever brought it to my attention. Like 90% of most bugs that I fix now is shit that's been there for years and no one said anything about it. So I'm like,
and sliding is also a really, how do you call it, common problem. Just characters, if they are crouching or if they jump and then they crouch immediately, they would slide. It's so horrible. Like in fighting games, just the characters don't slide.
Yeah,
they don't slide like that.
That's one of the great anomalies that default M.U.G.E.N did that people thought was okay.
Yeah. Unless you're playing like BlazBlue, there's some sliding there, but that's intentional.
Right.
And you can feel it's intentional. In M.U.G.E.N, you can tell, that's not supposed to happen.
We're not even going to get into the concept of BlazBlue characters in M.U.G.E.N in general because
oh my god,
on a certain level with me, I feel like it's not really possible.
Yeah.
And it's not something we should worry about.
I feel the same way.
Right. So with all that aside, your first character, you mentioned why you chose it and what you went with. What did you like about it at the time? Like, what were you excited about before, like, when you were getting ready to release it and everything else? What made you be like, I'm glad I did this?
It was the fact that I could make a character. And I was like, I was a big fan of POTS at the time, Phantom of the Server, and Iron M.U.G.E.N, and I was like, I can make characters, and I can make whoever I want. So when I first finished this character, I was really excited, and I knew I could just pick one character from KOF, and I could try to make it. I mean, at the time, I knew my character wasn't the best one. I could tell, but I knew I could at least try and make something for myself in the way I wanted it. So
yeah,
that was really exciting for me, I think.
I think that's a bigger thing that a lot of people they like it themselves, but I notice now where people just kind of have this sense of gratification where they're like, if I like it, then everyone should like it, and if you disagree with me, something's wrong with you, and not, well, I'm gonna try to fix it, but this is my first character. The willingness to be critiqued is another thing that I notice is slightly a problem. It affects everyone in all areas. It's just more noticeable with the bigger outbursts. Like basically when it becomes a shitstorm thread or whatever, when someone just lashes out with how dare you or whatever. But they come and go. They're always entertaining to me because the meltdowns are really funny more than anything.
And I got destroyed. I got really, really harsh feedback from M.U.G.E.N. and who was it? Orchikof 97. Yeah. He's my hero, by the way. But I learned a lot from those two. They were kind of my mentors in a way. So when I got their feedback and I started checking the way they did things, and that's how I started to fix my own things. And I started liking them more too, because I knew they were starting to feel better. So
yeah, in my case, so I got like a grace period of at least like 3 years before anyone seriously said anything to me. The first person to really get on my case was Jesus Zilla, and at the time I didn't really take it seriously because I'm like, what character did he make? Oh, that one. Yeah, I'm really gonna consider what he has to say when he made that thing and didn't call it a character. And that was just me being naive at the time. But in my defense, I was 16, so I was going through a period where I was like, I'm the best, and I was the worst. It happens. You mentioned that you already had people who was critiquing your work. Like, what major community were you in at the time, and like, what was it like back then?
It was rough because basically you couldn't borrow any code without permission. That was the big thing. So I guess the catchphrase of that time was code theft. That was probably it. I remember that studying the way I tried to study, because I wanted to learn from these coders, right? But I knew they were closed source. What I had to do was I would look at their code. I couldn't copy paste. I couldn't do any of that because someone would get on my case. So I would just look at the way they did things and try to understand why. And I mean, look at the logic and try to learn from it. And then I would try to apply the same thing to my character. So it wasn't copy pasting, but it kind of was. Yeah, I mean,
in retrospect, it really limited the idea of creation. Like, for every good thing that I've liked about that era, I understand now that I'm like, it's kind of impossible to make anything decent without basically looking like you took it from someone else because they play similar, or they're like a similar. If someone makes a good KOF character and you make a good KOF character, they're gonna be like, oh, your corner push code is similar to this guy. Did you take it?
Yeah.
Nowadays, they'd be on your case even if you made it on your own, and people on the internet don't believe anything. So, like, I can imagine it being a bigger shitstorm than when someone actually is found out of taking someone else's code, because it still happens now, but no one really gives a damn, and I'm kind of okay with it. There was a dilemma before, like recently, where someone was like, "Oh, so and so just made a sprite set for Falcon. Are you gonna use mine as a base?" And I'm like, "I'm so glad I was mentioned and asked about this, but I really can't get mad. I can't say anything about it because no one cares. But at the same time, I'm like, you didn't even think of bringing it to my attention, because I wouldn't just copy and paste that code. That thing is not exactly as a mess. It's just confusing. Like, I did a lot of things. There was a lot of firsts in that character that even now I look back and I'm not sure what the hell I really did with it. Like, a lot of my code I don't really comment on. So,
but I think the community is far better now in general. I mean, it's more open, at least. So if you want to learn from this perspective, at least, if you want to learn, it's really easy because you can just pick up someone that has done a lot of examples and you can look at it. There's no problem if you copy a few things. I mean, if it helps you learn, that's great, because a lot of us started and our bases were Kung Fu Man and the stuff Sander put up in his side. And that's it. I mean, good luck, man. You have to.
Sander in general is just, oh man.
You have to go ahead and do your research and spend hours studying the games and just come up with it yourself. I mean, there was no guidance even for art money. The art money tutorial I had, for example, it was for sprite ripping. So I was like, can I even use this for data? I mean, on IRC, people told me you can use hard money for that. And I was like, okay, so how? Yeah, I just...
Explain.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're leagues ahead of that time. There's tools, there's information, there's tutorials. So it's a really nice time to start learning. I think.
I agree. Regardless of how things are now, we are still leagues ahead of where we were. I came in 1 year later from when you first made anything, but I think it was going to be more fun when I interview people like B and XDB who were around during MRev, because I really want to know about that time period.
Yeah.
That just seems like things were fucking nuts. But you mentioned that you had a Orochi KOF and Iron Mugen help you out. Like, how exactly did you get them on board to assist you when they were some of your harshest critics at first?
Well, I was friends with... I used to be in the hashtag M.U.G.E.N. How do you say it?
The IRC?
Yeah, that thing. The M.U.G.E.N. channel on IRC. And I remember... Who was it? Kung Fu Man. Yeah, Kung Fu Man. He was friends with Orochi KOF. And he sometimes came into the channel. I started asking him about the things he told me on my threads. So that's how I started getting help. I mean, I just started asking, oh, so I have this problem. How would you deal with it? That's how I started getting pointers. Iron Mugen, he actually posted in the Spanish section. It's like really a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I would ask him, so how do you manage velocities, for example? I would ask him that, and he would tell me his method. And that's how I started getting a little bit of information at a time regarding how they made their characters. And it was the same thing with Art Money. I had the pleasure of being able to ask Neo-Guki, and oh my god, he's a genius. When King of Fighters 11 came out, he already had a table with everything in it. I mean, he ripped every single sprite. He had the velocities, acceleration, everything was in his table. So he just posted it in the channel, and I was like, I want to use this. I mean, I was a pain in the ass because I didn't know anything. I just kept asking him questions. He was probably really annoyed at me, but that's how I started learning how to use Art Money. Asking.
Yeah, I think that, like, I've been trying to be a little more patient when people ask me things. Cause a lot of the stuff I get is, like, through Twitter and private messages now, but, like, they ask me questions that I'm like, a part of me is like, why don't you already know this? I don't want to break this down. It's so fucking simple. But then I'm like, I was like that before. And back then I was asking the exact same dumb questions, and people were getting just as annoyed. So I'm like, all right, let me try to explain this as much as simply as I can. Like, you're going to be here for a while. Basically, that's pretty much how it was with me. And you kind of covered advice for beginners, where you're like, just ask around, look at people's methodology, and kind of just go from there. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, there's actually an interesting thing that has helped me over the years. Because I think there's two ways of making characters. If you're going for accuracy, at least, or trying to establish a system. And for example, do you remember Elix? He was in the forum. He's from Russia, and he was making a Kyo.
Yeah.
The super accurate Kyo. So there's people like him who say, I'm gonna make this character. And basically, they want to make it super accurate, so they start hard coding everything, right? So their character is accurate. I mean, you can have accurate velocities by using posets. I mean, no one stops you from doing that. Yeah. But it's hard coding, right? So basically, what he was doing, for example, he's like, I'm gonna code Kyo's DP, right? And he does that. He codes Kyo's DP. But that's the issue, because I think it's better if you start coding types of movement instead of really specific moves. Like, there's a difference between coding Kyo's DP and coding just an uppercut, right? And then you can start generalizing the idea more. You can start coding, I'm gonna start coding moves that follow a certain path, right? So what you're doing is coding in skeletons, right? You're thinking of a certain type of movement, and you code the skeleton for that, right? It's like making a sketch, right? So you code the basic movement, the skeleton, and then you fill in the details, effects. That's like the fourth layer, but you start filling the details like hit deaths and velocities, and just the rest of the things, right?
Right.
So I think it's far better if people would code like this. Instead of thinking of making certain specific moves, start by making skeletons. Just go through it in basics, sort of like that. I mean, it might be a weird idea. Since I've been doing that for so many years, I just have several templates. So I'm like, I want to code this type of move. So I just use one template, fill in the details, and I'm done.
Right.
And it's gonna be right because I already made the base part, right? Which is the movement. If you do that, you're probably gonna get the exact same quality as if you made everything hard coded, except it's not.
Right.
It looks really clean. It's elegant. Yeah, I think people should start doing that because they worry too much about the final layers, right? Like the icing on the cake, which is effects and the pots layers, whatever, the counter hit effects, stuff like that.
Yeah, I understand. Like in that aspect, they're worried about the polish before they've built the car.
Exactly.
Because of that, you end up driving something that looks really cool. Like if somebody just saw pictures of it, they're like, man, that's a nice car. And they get behind the wheel and it drives like a freaking Pinto. And it looks like a Corvette. Someone's going to be a little bit miffed about it. Some people might like that. I don't know. I would be a little bit miffed if I bought a new car and it drove like something 40 years old. Because it wasn't put together that well. Whereas if I got a car that basically drove really smooth, got me where I needed to go, really efficient, but needed a new coat of paint, I can live with that. Because I'll put the fucking coat of paint on myself, worst come to worst. I don't care. And that in that analogy or that sense, that's another thing that I kind of see as a potential issue. I feel like we're getting out of that era now where they're realizing that it's not going to work if you just slap that on everything.
Right.
Like, no matter what your template it is, whether it be like Capcom versus the World or the pot stuff or Infinite, all of those stuff. Like, it's more than that. You can't just put that on a character and be done with it.
Right.
Because even the people who really, really like that kind of stuff are eventually going to start calling you out on it. Like, this doesn't feel like you did anything different. Like, this character still moves like that one. I'm happy to see that that's finally coming to us somewhat, and people are getting smarter about it. I feel like there's more effort being done in the stuff coming out now. Because of that, I feel somewhat optimistic. But that being said, I only got like 46 more of these things to go before I just completely fucking disappear entirely. So I don't know. That's just how I see things. And if I even get to 150, which honestly, if I would have said 100, I would have been done last year. But I kept going because I don't know.
You probably will.
Yeah. I'm in a bit of a period where I don't feel like doing anything right now. So I know stuff is gonna get delayed indefinitely. Anyway, this is like the last thing. Anything else you wanted to say, like a last remark kind of deal?
I guess it would be don't give up. Because a lot of people just give up. Like they release one character, they get feedback and they say, well, they don't really like what I'm doing, so they stop creating, and that's not really how it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I think that if people just give it one more chance to at least listen to what people have to say and try to improve, I think we would have at least more people creating content right now. And some of them can be really interesting. There's even artists like Warner. That's one really special case because he was really good at making sprites, right? But he actually had to use the code of
other people,
right? And basically that was forbidden right back in the day, so
it didn't really sit well with a lot of people. Mostly, I think the biggest thing with that was the Evil Homer fiasco. That was probably the one that made him call it quits. Well, not really that it made him call it quits, but it led to the end of it because there was so much backlash, and it wasn't because of what he did; it's because who he took it from.
Exactly.
Like that was like Ryu was still pretty fresh in terms of what happened to him, and like that happened like maybe 6 months later, and I'm like, oh no, like dude, of all the things you could have done, even at that naive time where I'm like, well, you shouldn't do it whatever, I don't care. I was like, dude, kind of early. I understand what you were trying to do. I understand what you're trying to do from a tribute point of view, and looking back, I can say his heart was in the right place.
Yeah.
But that was not quite the way to go about it.
Exactly. But yeah, basically, if don't give up, just keep coding. CNS is a stupid language. It's not even a programming language.
It's not. It's just fill in the blank, really.
Yeah, it's an XML.
It's a programmer's version of Cards versus Humanity. That's how I treat it now.
And basically, if you just keep going at it, you're gonna learn it eventually. You're gonna know. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it that you won't learn from the documentation. One of the most famous advice, like, yeah, the first advice they give you is like, read the documentation. Don't do that. Just don't do that. Start coding right away. Just grab a character. If you want to make a certain move, grab a character that you know that has that move. Look at how they did it and try to recreate it. That's really the way to learn. Just look at a whole bunch of examples. Start learning. Start building things. Start to look at the essence of what makes a move work. And try to make a template, you know, make the skeletons. You're eventually going to get really good at it. Eventually. If you follow feedback, of course.
Yeah.
If you don't, then I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you'll be like Kong and make everyone in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, except they play really weird. I don't know, but just listen to feedback.
Kong has a special place in my heart because he kind of inspired me to basically exceed where he was from a character point of view, except that like 98% of them don't suck. Like, I don't want to be as blunt like that, but that was like I'm like, I believe it's possible to maintain quality and quantity, and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
It's been a long road.
Yeah.
You've been around longer than me, but you spent more time getting things right than I have, whereas I have to backtrack a lot and then keep going forward. I'm like, well, I won't make these mistakes twice. And I maybe had like 3 characters ever that I only had to release once because everything was pretty much perfect. Then I probably might find some with them now. But the point is, no one else did. And that's good enough for me. If I run into them in my arcade mode, they don't bug out, and I consider that a success.
Yeah.
In that regard, even me, I don't really consider myself like a standard of any kind or a goal to attain. I'm just a person with a lot of spare time who just made a lot of fucking things, for better or worse.
Right.
And that's pretty much all I can say about that. Well, I thank you for the time discussing all this, picking at your brain, seeing things that I was not around to see or even to know about for quite a while, until like recently even. And I think that people who would hear this would also get a kick out of it, because not for nothing, you kind of have more fans than I do. So they're gonna like this. I'm just a narrator bringing it to the masses. But hopefully on the next one, I'm gonna speak with Mr. XEB / Big Eli King.
That would be great. Yeah.
/ a whole bunch of other names. The guy who's the reason why there's so many Silent Storm clones.
Oh my god.
And the one who started the first unrequestable character who people, I don't know. He's a man who's too old for this shit.
Alright.
And hopefully he won't be too old for these questions.
Oh yeah. By the way, I have a special beta in my site, and it's hidden. So I'm just gonna say what the address is here and see if people find it. So basically you have to go to my site, which is vans.trinitymugen.net /evo 2015. You'll find it there. Go look for it. It's a beta. I was just saying.